Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the public hearing for the Ontario Airport Connector Project. We're just going to give it a few minutes for everyone to get situated and join the meeting. So please hold tight and we will begin our presentation shortly. All right, it looks like we have a good group going here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. My name is Madison Viola, and I am part of the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority's public outreach team, and you're joining the public hearing for the Ontario Airport Connector Project. At this time, we're just going to take a minute to provide instructions for anyone interested in hearing today's presentation in Spanish using Zoom's interpretation feature. Once our instructions are given, we will enable interpretation and begin our presentation. Aldo, will you please give those instructions in Spanish?
Sure, Madison, thank you. Bienvenidos a todos a la reunión que tenemos el día de hoy, auspiciada por la Autoridad de Transporte del Condado de San Bernardino, para tener esta audiencia pública para el proyecto de conexión al Aeropuerto Internacional de Ontario. Vamos a explicar en este momento cómo se puede acceder a los servicios de interpretación en español. Para acceder a este servicio de interpretación, puede hacerlo a través de computadora o de su teléfono móvil. En caso de que tenga una computadora, haga clic en el icono de interpretación en las opciones que se encuentran en la parte inferior de su pantalla, que son los controles de Zoom de esta reunión. Seleccione Spanish o español del menú una vez que haya hecho clic primero en el icono de interpretación, que es un globo terráqueo. Luego selecciona español. Si tiene usted un teléfono móvil, lo que debe hacer es ir a los controles de Zoom, que son como unos tres puntitos. Aprieten esos tres puntitos y va a ver interpretación. Haga clic en interpretación y nuevamente seleccione español para finalizar. Con esto estamos listos para empezar la interpretación. Thank you, Madison.
Thank you. We'll now go ahead and start that interpretation feature. All right, a couple of housekeeping items that we want to explain before we get underway with our presentation. Today, we will be discussing the Ontario Airport Connector Project, highlighting general project information and the environmental review process. Our webinar is being recorded and will be posted at our website at gosbcta.com/ONT connector later this week. As part of the meeting feature, your microphone is automatically muted and your cameras have been disabled. We'll be using Zoom's chat feature to answer your questions at the end of at the conclusion of the presentation. We will highlight and respond to any key themes or topics from those questions. Please note that to have your comment or question formally recorded, you'll need to visit the breakout room with the court reporter. As part of the public comment period, which started on October 18th, this meeting will feature a breakout room with a designated court reporter for you to provide comments to be included in the draft environmental impact report and the environmental assessment. And finally, this is an informational meeting to educate you about this project. We believe that all positions, positive or negative, related to SBCTA activities should have a voice in the process. However, we expect that this will be done in a respectful manner. SBCTA reserves the right to monitor, filter, and remove content or participants that our team deems inappropriate. As I mentioned, we will be using the chat feature within the Zoom platform to answer your questions during this evening's presentation. For those of you using Zoom on your computer, laptop, or other mobile device, the chat feature can be found at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom toolbar. Simply click on where it says chat and select SBCTA as the recipient. And once you've entered your question, go ahead and click the send arrow in that bottom right-hand corner. If you're calling from a telephone tonight, please email your questions to our project team at ontconnector@gosbcta.com. We encourage your participation and questions in today's meeting, but the discussions that take place during the presentation will not be part of the official record. So we're going to go into that a little bit more on the next couple of slides. There are several ways to officially provide comments to be part of the official record for the public comment period. You can submit a comment at any time during this evening's presentation with a court reporter in the breakout room, which we will activate in just a minute. You can send a handwritten letter to the address on the screen. Email ontconnector@gosbcta.com and use the subject line ONT Connector Project, or submit an online comment via the project website at gosbcta.com/ONT Connector. And please remember that the deadline to submit any comments for the Ontario Airport Connector Project is December 2nd, 2024. All right, we're almost done with our housekeeping items. As I shared, tonight's meeting will feature a breakout room for those wanting to leave a comment with the court reporter to be included in the draft environmental impact report and environmental assessment documents. Once we launch this feature, you will see the words breakout room in your Zoom meeting toolbar. And if you're using an older version of Zoom, you may find this feature by clicking the 3 dots that indicate more on your toolbar. Once you click on the breakout room, you'll need to select join to officially join the court reporter in the room, and select join once more to confirm your choice. Once you are done submitting a formal comment with the court reporter, please rejoin the main presentation, as only one person can be in there with the court reporter at a time, and someone from our staff will be in there to help direct that process. If you require a Spanish translator to submit your comment, we kindly ask that you wait until the conclusion of our presentation Q&A session so that our translator can join you in the breakout room. All right, I'd like to go ahead and hand it over to Tim Watkins, who is the Chief Legislative and Public Affairs at SBCTA, to officially kick off this public hearing.
Thanks, Madison. Go ahead and go to the next slide as well. So really appreciate all of you being here. This is an important process. I see more than 60 folks listed as participants here in the room. That is just awesome that there's that much engagement, and we're glad that you're here. And we hope that after this is over, if there's other folks that you know that you think should weigh in on this, guide them to our website, watch this firsthand, this presentation firsthand as well. And be able to comment before the December 2nd period is up. So again, we really do appreciate it. This slide that's on the screen now represents our team that's here tonight to present to you. They're just the tip of the iceberg. It's a lot of professional folks involved in putting this together to make sure that we vet this proposal appropriately. With us, and I'm sure you'll meet him at some point, is Victor Lopez. He's our Director of Transit and Rail, and then the others from the team that you'll hear throughout the night. So again, I really appreciate you guys being here, and we look forward to the questions as well as then your comments into the document as well. Thanks, Madison.
Thank you. Right. All right, Cynthia, if you can go ahead and launch the breakout room and assign Monica in there. Again, at any time during this presentation, you can use the breakout room to officially have a comment or question recorded as part of the environmental process. You can also use that chat feature to submit questions throughout the presentation to be responded to at the end of the agenda. All right, we're just going to quickly go through the agenda, and then we're going to get into the meat of this presentation. So our upcoming presenters will take you through tonight's agenda, including providing an overview of the Ontario Airport Connector Project, explaining the CEQA and NEPA environmental process, and will share project alternatives, the environmental summary, and next steps. At the conclusion of the presentation, we will respond to questions and comments submitted using the chat feature. And at any time during tonight's public hearing, you are welcome to visit the court reporter in the breakout room to have your comment officially recorded and submitted as part of the environmental process. Now, I would like to invite James Santos to go ahead and give the project overview.
Thank you, Madison. Oh, next slide.
Sorry, just a second. We're getting there. All right.
Thank you. The purpose of this public hearing is to provide information about the proposed project, the environmental process, including the next steps in the environmental phase, also information about project alternatives, environmental impacts, and measures to minimize and mitigate those impacts. We are also soliciting comments about the project. Again, if you have any comments about the proposed project, feel free to provide comments via the SBCTA website or the breakout room. Next slide, please. So the project is located in San Bernardino County and parallels the I-15 and I-10 freeways. The proposed project area encompasses the cities of Rancho Cucamonga and Ontario, the Cucamonga Metrolink Station, and the Ontario International Airport. The project alignment traverses along Milliken Avenue, crossing the I-10, and then along Airport Drive to Ontario International Airport. Next slide. So the project is needed because the lack of direct transit connection between the Metrolink station and Ontario International Airport. In addition, because of increased roadway congestion, airport passengers experience unreliable travel times to and from the airport, and most airport passengers are using passenger vehicles as the main mode of transportation, which subsequently increases vehicle miles traveled and increases in greenhouse gas emissions within the communities near the airport. Next slide. So the project goals and objective, basically we're aiming to enhance transportation access to Ontario International Airport by providing a direct link to Cucamonga Station. We're also trying to improve mobility and connections, reduce congestion on roadways by encouraging transit use and promote the use of autonomous electric vehicles. These objectives that you see here were utilized to determine other feasible project alternatives and options for the proposed project. Next slide. So the history of the proposed project dates back 16 years ago with the Metro Gold Line Foothill Extension Study in 2008, when the public expressed the need for a public transit connection from regional rail system to the airport. This study, it covered about 13 alternatives, which explored which evaluated the feasibility of a light rail extension from Montclair Station via Cucamonga Creek or Vineyard Avenue. In 2014, the ensuing rail airport access study carried forward the recommended alternatives from the 2008 study while studying new options for connecting nearby Metrolink stations to the airport. In total, the 2014 study covered 32 alternatives, including various alignments, and were assessed within SBCTA's technical working group. Now, these alternatives were evaluated on its viability to meet the purpose and need of the project and the screening criteria. Now, the 2014 Rail Access Study explored various modes of transit, such as zero emission multiple units, ZEMUs, diesel multiple units, DEMUs, shuttle buses along various alignments. Further studies were also conducted in 2018 with the Inter-County Transit and Rail Connectivity Study and Hybrid Rail Service Study, which evaluated another 38 potential alternatives utilizing various transit modes. In total, 83 alternatives were evaluated by SBCTA to determine if they were feasible. In 2020, SBCTA received an unsolicited proposal to connect the Cucamonga Station to Ontario International Airport via fixed guideway tunnel. SBCTA reviewed the tunnel concept and compared it to other transit alternatives developed between 2008 and 2018 and determined that the tunnel option resulted in generally less environmental impacts, avoided property acquisitions, relocations of businesses and homes, and met the objectives of the project. In 2022, the SBCTA held a project scoping meeting and solicited input from the public about the proposed tunnel option and the scope of the environmental studies. Comments received from the public scoping meeting were considered by SBCTA during the preparation of the draft EIR and EA. And after the scoping meeting, SBCTA prepared environmental studies analyzing the potential environmental impacts of the proposed project. In October 2024, SBCTA released the findings of the environmental studies in the form of a draft EIR and EA. Next slides. So more about these alternatives. So as mentioned in previous slide, SBCTA explored 83 alternatives between 2008 and 2018, plus the tunnel alternative in 2020. Out of these 84 alternatives, alternatives 1, 2, 3, and 4 were considered as alternatives because of its potential to meet the project objectives. These 4 alternatives are alternative 1, the tunnel option, alternatives 2 and 3, proposed fixed guideway system from Cucamonga Station to the airport, utilizing DMUs and ZMUs. Alternative 2 proposed an alignment via Hermosa Avenue, and while alternative 3 traverse through Deer Creek. Alternative 4 is a proposed shuttle bus from the Cucamonga Station to the airport, but all 4 alternatives were compared and further screened based on their performance to achieve project objectives. Next slide. So these are the project objectives used to assess the 4 alternatives. So the evaluation of the 4 potential alternatives are based on meeting 4 key project objectives. 1 is the mobility improvements, which considers transit travel time and effects to the transit system. 2, service reliability, which considers operating schedule and headways. 3 is maximizing mobility capacity, which accounts for the number of passengers that could be served per hour. And 4, minimizing environmental impacts, which considers impacts of surrounding residents, businesses, community facilities, and the environment. Based on the performance of alternatives 2 and 3 rank high in its capacity to serve the most passengers, but at the cost of significant environmental impacts associated with right-of-way acquisitions and potential displacements of residents and businesses. Alternative 4, the shuttle bus alternative, resulted in minimal environmental impacts, but did not meet the mobility, service reliability, and capacity requirements. So of the 4 potential alternatives, alternative 1, consisting of a tunnel system, best aligned with the project's purpose, needs, and goals, as it would provide the highest benefits. Alternative 1 was rated highest to meet project objectives and would not require right-of-way acquisitions and permanently displace residents and businesses. Because alternative 1 met all the established project objectives with medium to high rating, it was recommended to be further evaluated in the environmental phase. Madison?
Hello, my name is Ivan Gonzalez with the SBCTA project team. Now that we have provided an overview and background of the ONT Connector project, we wanted to provide information about the environmental process for the project. Next slide, please. First, we'll get into what is CEQA. And CEQA stands for the California Environmental Quality Act. And this requires that state and local agencies analyze and disclose the environmental impacts of proposed projects and identify mitigation measures to minimize or eliminate significant impacts. So essentially, it's to inform decision makers and the public about the potential environmental impacts of proposed projects, to reduce those environmental impacts to the extent feasible. And an EIR is being prepared because it was determined as the appropriate environmental approach for the proposed project, as it allows for the most comprehensive and detailed evaluation of resources for this proposed project. Next slide, please. And what is NEPA? And so as part of the environmental process, SBCTA and in coordination with the FTA are also preparing what's called an environmental assessment to comply with the requirements of NEPA. And the National Environmental Policy Act was written to ensure that federal decision makers consider the environmental effects of proposed federal actions to avoid, minimize, or mitigate adverse effects. An environmental assessment, oh, back please, thank you. An environmental assessment is being prepared for this project because no adverse effects that would not be avoided, minimized, or mitigated were anticipated prior to the start of the environmental phase.
Hi, I'll be talking about the bill alternatives. Next slide. What is included in the draft EIR EA? There's the no project, no build alternative, where it represents the project area as if the proposed project was not constructed, and the projects that are already funded and planned would still be developed in the area. Next, I'll talk about the proposed project build alternatives on the next slide. So this project proposed building approximately 4 miles of a bidirectional tunnel alignment between Cucamonga Metrolink Station and the Ontario Airport, depicted on the red line in the map on the right. Starting at the Cucamonga Station, project is building what we're calling the Cucamonga Station, as well as the maintenance storage facility. And that'll take place within the existing Metrolink station that's currently there. From there, it'll be a tunnel underneath within Milliken, going south, Milliken Avenue, and we'll cross under the existing I-10 interchange at Milliken Avenue, where a access ventilation shaft is proposed. You can see that a little better in the bottom right insert map. There are 2 proposed locations for this ventilation shaft. One is in the northwestern quadrant of the interchange, and another option is in the southwest quadrant of the interchange. From there, the tunnel continues south, crossing under the Union Pacific Railroad, and then it makes its way westerly along Airport Drive, making its way to the Ontario Airport. And then there are 2 stations that are proposed at the airport, one at each terminal, existing Terminal 4, and then the existing Terminal 2. As for the operations of this project, we're talking about autonomous on-demand electric shuttles. Next slide. Some technical terms and terminologies that we be talking to is what we call TBM, tunnel boring machine. It's a large drilling machine horizontally that you use to dig tunnels by cutting through soil and rock, creating a smooth, stable tunnel wall as it advances. Another method is what we call cut and cover, where it involves digging a trench, building the tunnel inside, and then covering it back up once it's done. The term at grade refers to infrastructure built at ground level, similar to roadways or railways. The term MSF, I mentioned previously, the maintenance and storage facility, refers to a facility supporting operations and maintenance of transit systems, often including washing, storing, maintenance of inventory, as well as employees' break room facilities. And then vent shaft, as I explained in the previous slide, it's a facility that provides access to and from the underground tunnel for ventilation and emergency access. Next slide. Here are some photos of, on the top left, what a typical tunnel boring machine looks like. On the bottom left is an example of a bore tunnel construction. And then on the right is what I mentioned earlier about the cut and cover construction, where you see a lot more of that in roadway construction and the like as well. Next slide. Here are renderings of potentially what the stations could look like. Top left is a rendering. The top left and right are renderings at the Cucamonga Metrolink station. The top left has the future Brightline project and station in the background, with the Ontario Connector Cucamonga station here in the foreground. Over on the top right, it's if you can imagine, coming walking out of the Metrolink, the Metrolink and the Brightline station, looking towards the Ontario Connector Cucamonga station. And then the bottom two are more the canopy stations that would typically be concept at the airport. They include, like I mentioned, kind of an open space concept where customers have refuge from the weather and can use the area for a shelter. Next slide. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Now that we have provided an overview of the design and operations for the ONT Connector project, we will provide a summary of the environmental analysis conducted for the project to comply with state and federal requirements. Next slide, please. So this slide shows a summary of the impacts for the environmental impact report under the California Environmental Quality Act. And to comply with the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, requirements, SBCTA has prepared a draft environmental impact report, or draft EIR, which is a disclosure document that SBCTA, as the lead agency, as the CEQA lead agency, has prepared to analyze potential impacts for the proposed project. Based on this analysis, the draft EIR studied the resource topics listed on this screen and found that, for the most part, these topics resulted in less than significant impacts. Some of these did require application or would require mitigation measures to reduce the impacts to a less than significant level, as you can see on both of these tables on your screen. So you can see the topics listed and what was analyzed in the draft EIR. Under CEQA, there would be significant and unavoidable impacts during construction only to air quality and paleontological resources, which would remain even after implementation of mitigation measures. So again, this is a disclosure document, and this is one of the main portions of the draft EIRs to disclose if there would be any significant and unavoidable impacts after even application of mitigation measures. Next slide, please. And to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, this slide presents a summary of the effects as part of the environmental assessment that was prepared for the ONT Connector project. And so the environmental assessment has been prepared to meet federal requirements and to determine if a proposed federal action would result in adverse effects to the environment. And as you can see on the screen, based on the analysis prepared in support of the environmental assessment, no adverse effects are listed on the left table here, and no adverse effects with mitigation measures are identified on the table to the right. There are no adverse effects remaining with application of mitigation measures. So that's the conclusion for the NEPA as part of the NEPA summary for the environmental assessment. Next slide, please.
Go to the next slide. Next slide, please. So my name is Victor, and I'll be presenting essentially the high-level overview of what are our typical next steps. So in this slide, as you can see, this shows essentially the overall program schedule. Our team just covered essentially what we've been working on and where we're at in this process, which is represented by those two dotted two circles. And you can see with the arrow kind of where we're at today, which is the overall environmental clearance process. The overall environmental clearance is now scheduled to be completed towards the spring of 2025. Once we are done with the environmental clearance, typically that's when you start a final design for the project. which typically would take a couple of years. Once you're done, then with final design, you go into project construction and testing, which further takes a couple more years. And then that's typically when the general public will see the construction out in the field. So we wanted to give you an idea again what that will look like. Of course, this schedule is contingent on environmental approvals and subject to change, but it gives you an idea what the next steps would be in the overall program schedule and sort of where we're at in that overall process. Next slide, please.
All right, I think we're back to me, Victor. I'll go ahead and take this one. That concludes the informational part of our presentation. We're just going to give you a couple reminders on how to submit official comments with the court reporter and how to submit your questions, for any clarification that you might want on our presentation. So first, we'll talk about how to get in that breakout room. There are several ways, again, to submit a comment. You can submit a formal comment with our court reporter in the breakout room. Please remember to rejoin the main presentation when you're done, as staff can only allow one attendee at a time with the court reporter. You can send a handwritten letter to the address on the screen. Email ontconnector@gosbcta.com using the subject line ONT Connector Project, or submit an online comment via the project website at gosbcta.com/ONT Connector. Please remember that the deadline for the public comment period is December 2nd, 2024. And then this is how you would access the breakout room again. You can go to the menu bar at the bottom of your screen, click that breakout room, and hit join court reporter. We have staff in there right now monitoring, making sure that we only have one person at a time in there, but be assured that we will go ahead and take down your name and invite you back into that breakout room if there is a little bit of a line to submit a comment at the moment. And then we'd like to formally open our question and answer section. The entire team here looks forward to continuing our conversation and our discussion surrounding this project. We'll go ahead and start taking questions from participants. And just a quick reminder, we'll be using the chat feature within the Zoom platform to answer your questions during or at the conclusion of the presentation. And if you're calling in from a telephone tonight, please submit any questions or comments to ontconnector@gosbcta.com via email. Again, please note that this is a question and answer session and will not be part of the official record. To submit an official comment, please visit the court reporter in the breakout room. And with that, I'll go ahead and bring Erin up on screen to see if we've received any questions regarding our presentation tonight.
We have not received any yet, but we stand ready to receive any of those questions and help out in that process.
Sounds great. We'll give folks just a few minutes, and maybe Erin, if you can just send a message out to the participants, letting them know that you're available and you're taking the questions. We can give folks a little bit of time. I know that it's a lot of information to process. And if you feel like a question comes to you after the presentation, our team will be on here for a little while, but you can also, again, submit any questions to ontconnector@gosbcta.com. Our team will receive those. You can also visit our project website at gosbcta.com/ONT Connector. We just launched that recently. It's a nice new interface, but you can go to the Get Involved section, and that's where you can submit a comment online. You can find information about how to contact our team, and also all of the documents, all the environmental documents are in the resources section down there at the bottom of the page.
Madison, we did have a question come through specific to the ridership. The peak ridership is 100 per the EIR. Is that correct?
Great. Victor, I think that's someone on your team. We have a panel of experts here to help assist in answering any questions. So I will let you field that question, maybe start it and then give it to someone who might have some more information.
Right now, the number is a different what we show in the environmental document. I would defer them to, I think it's section 3.14.213 that shows what the projected ridership is at opening year as well as the horizon. That section generally describes the methodology on how we go about projecting ridership, the process that we go through, and what is the anticipated ridership at opening year as well as the horizon year of 2040.
Great, thank you, Victor. I think we had a few more questions come in.
Yes. And could you expand a bit on what the autonomous vehicle would look like? For example, approximate passenger capacity, and storage, and any other details?
So I mean, I can take on that question. Generally, the details of the actual vehicle dimensions, parameters, and all that is something that we need to embark and finalize as part of our next design process. So that's the details that we'll develop in the next phase. Again, generally speaking, that we have to design a system obviously to accommodate the projected ridership, but specifics of the detail is something we still need to finalize.
And do we have any data to share on projected traffic between the airport and the bus station?
Do we have any ridership data that shows the ridership between? I would ask that you guys submit a specific question tied to that. Again, I would refer them back to, we do have a ridership report that talks about the specifics on the numbers per stations. I don't recall right now, but the question is not clear. If it's, we have obviously various bus stops along the existing bus stops along the corridor, but in this project, as it was alluded to earlier on, has a Cucamonga station connecting to two stations of the airport property with no bus stops in between.
Victor, if I can interrupt just for a moment. I think the question, as it was posed, is focused on any projections of the surface transportation demands that are going to be there, not just what we expect in ridership on the shuttle system, but what is the demand on traffic on the roadways expected to be that we're trying to help mitigate?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I mean what I would offer again is on this part of this process and the scoping is to identify what those impacts would be, right? As part of implementing a transit system, is the idea is to reduce vehicle miles traveled, as it was alluded to earlier in the presentation. We go through the process of identifying what is those traffic that we're essentially removing off the roadways. And we do go through a process to analyze intersections and the traffic impacts tied over those intersections. So again, I would encourage you to look into the documents if you're looking for specifics on intersections. But globally speaking, again, the overall goal of the project, of course, is to reduce vehicle miles traveled on the existing corridor system.
And again, just as a reminder to those of you who are asking questions, if you're not getting the response to the answer or to the question that you think you're posing, these are still valid questions to participate in the process with. So please do submit them formally, and the team will then do all of the analysis required to respond to those and incorporate those responses into the final environmental document.
We did have a question come in regarding future expansion, and will the project be designed with the ability for future expansion, such as an infill station that could be added at a later date at the airport or extend at either end of the route?
That what I would add is the environmental document, right, and as the studies that we've undertaken to analyze the impacts on this project does not anticipate a future expansion beyond the stations that are contemplated in the environmental document. Of course, that doesn't mean that there cannot be future expansion. It's just that that is not contemplated as far as the impacts that we analyze under this document.
What kind of redundancy will be available if the tunnels are blocked due to a broken vehicle? Would other autonomous vehicles be able to drive around those vehicles? And would a bus bridge be established?
I mean, I would say that the details of how we handle emergency access systems, right, is something that we embark on the final design process. So the details, I mean, it's obviously something that we need to be taking into account to design a system that is able to handle and meets the current safety requirements that relates to access within the tunnel, no different than any other project. But again, those details are final design, and the impact side of that is obviously something that we'll be looking into the final design process, which if you look back to the earlier slide at the overall program schedule, once we're done with the environmental process, we then embarked into a, I'll say up to 2-year design process where we kind of go through the details of finalizing those specific safety requirements in the process to address those safety issues.
Question, is the alternatives analysis with the conventional rail alternatives part of this environmental document? If not, where can it be found?
James, I think
if you
covered that side. Go ahead.
If you want to just revisit where the alternatives can be found in the document.
Sorry, Madison, what was the comment?
Is the alternatives analysis with the conventional rail alternatives part of this environmental document? And if not, where can it be found?
Yes, so our project team covered early in some of the earlier slides, the various studies that have been undertaken, right? They looked at various modes, and then how those sections were alternatives, whether they were considered but not carried forward into this phase of the project, right? This phase of the project is looking at a build and no build alternative, but some other modes, including rail access, were considered early on in the process, and that screening criteria was sort of that presentation size that we covered earlier. But again, there's further details on those specific alignments and the details associated with those alignments that were initially looked at, but not considered to be carried forward as a build alternative for this phase of the project.
I'll just add that we also have an appendix that details all the history of this, and so that it does discuss some of the rail alternatives. So we can look at that as well. That is available online.
Another question, if the shuttle bus alternative has a similar ridership projection and a lower cost, what is the benefit of the tunnel alternative?
Yeah, but again, I think without getting into all the details here, is that we did look at, again, comparing the different alternatives, right, and bus in different modes. I think that slide, there was a previous slide that covers essentially what are the pros and cons for different alternatives that were evaluated, I would say, at an earlier step in the process. At a high level, one of them, again, is the purpose and need of the overall project. It was one of them. But there's a couple other ones that again, we deferred back to just looking at those other criteria that we'd use to evaluate what options should we move forward as a build alternative. Again, the bus alternative is one of the many ones that we looked at, both light rail, heavy rail, and different alignments along the corridor.
And we did have a question come in just to confirm that the question is, I heard this tunnel is only a one-way tunnel. I wanted to get clarification on whether or not it's one way or two.
So right now it's envisioned, right, as a bi-directional tunnel. Again, the details of the specific, how that's separated out, vehicle mode, type, and the details surrounding what makes up that space will be developed in the final design. But as of now, it does contemplate a bi-directional tunnel, meaning traffic in both operations in both directions.
Many of these questions are great and they cover similar areas. So I'm just looking to see if we have others that we have not touched on yet.
While Aaron's doing that, I'm just going to throw out a friendly reminder that, again, these questions that are being submitted and answered right now are not part of the official comment period. So if you do want to submit an official comment, please go ahead and visit the court reporter in our breakout room. But that being said, we are happy to answer as many questions as we can here. Thank you so much.
Just if we could just remind everyone tuning in where they can find more information on whether or not the question coming in is about ridership, and just revisit that response to the ridership, anticipated ridership.
Right, Victor, if we can bring you back up. You're the star of the show right now. Just a second, there he is.
What was the question again, Madison? Is what, again, the ridership and how they can get that information on the environmental document?
Yeah, specifically, they were reviewing the EIR, and projected ridership for the opening year was about 500 per day. Is this correct? Am I reading the right source? And is it responsible to spend 500 million on construction for such low ridership?
That the ridership is a little bit higher than that. Again, I would defer to have them look at our table. I'm trying to look it up right now. 314 on the environmental document shows the opening year and horizon year. I would again welcome to look into what the methodology was used to look into the ridership model development and assumptions that relates to growth surrounding the property and the various stations and properties to come up with that ridership number.
And what impact will the project have on wildlife and pollution in the environment?
I think Ivan or James, you want to chime in on?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Sure. What impact will this project have in wildlife and pollution in the environment?
Certainly, and that is all information that is included in the draft EIR and the EA. There's respective resource topic sections that provide that information, existing conditions, as well as the future with implementation of the project, as well as consideration of the no project or no build alternative. So I would suggest that those particular topics of interest, whether it's biological resources, which I interpret as the wildlife part of the question, and then for the pollution part of the question, there's specific, topics, including I would say like greenhouse gas emissions, air quality. Those particular topics would include some of that detail. But speaking high level, I guess that's my answer.
So let me weigh in just for a second, everyone. So, and all of those listening as well. I can see as I watch and observe that it might feel like that you're not getting very explicit answers to your questions, because that would be inappropriate during the environmental process to be that explicit about things that are covered within the document. So the point of this meeting is for you to gain some clarity so that you can then comment and participate in the process. So your questions are very explicit, very direct. I think also very appropriate for the document itself. And as some of our staff here have indicated, there definitely there's locations where that information may be already answered for you in the existing draft. And if it's not answered adequately, then you can comment as to where that inadequacy is. But this meeting is not for them to get into the details of that explicit response, because it still needs a more thorough analysis and review and vetting for submitting as a final consideration by those who approve the ultimate document. So I apologize on behalf of the team if it feels like some of our responses are not being all inclusive, but that's exactly the reason why we have legal requirements that keep us from doing some of that, because of integrity to the process.
And if I may add, if you provide that question to us in a comment format, what we could do is we could actually provide you additional information as to where in the EIR or where in the EA you might be able to find the information that you're seeking. A question like biological resources and about pollution, there's multiple areas that we cover that topic in terms of including pollution, like Ivan mentioned, air quality, greenhouse gas, but it's also covered in hazards as well as hydrology. So it depends on the environmental topic itself, and we cover about over 20 environmental topics. So if you provide your question in a comment format, we'll be able to properly assess what your questions are and properly able to answer your questions or your comments. So leaving a comment with the court reporter would be the best way for you to seek your answers.
Thank you for that input, Jennifer. I know that we still have a couple of questions coming in. Our team is just taking a moment to kind of filter those and make sure that we're addressing them accurately and efficiently. So if you can just hang tight for a moment, we will make sure we answer as many as we can tonight.
So, hi
Great.
guys, hey again. So one of the things that's coming through is what kind of questions are we supposed to ask, right? So this meeting is held halfway through the public review period, following after 2 weeks of the release of the actual document to the public. Our expectation is that you will have, as an interested party, will have done some review of the document based on your specific concerns. And if there's not enough information in that document for your question, then tonight is to gain some clarification so that you can then comment effectively into the process. So it isn't for us to hash or rehash the entire document's contents. It's to help clarify things that are not captured within the document itself.
Thank you, Tim. We'll go ahead and take the next questions. I see Erin's eyes and head moving, so I know she's going through all of them. Any other ones that stand out?
We did have one. If the team could just point our viewers to where they can find more information about some climate resiliency elements about the study, specifically, whether it's heat, floods, winds, those types of things.
Great. Yeah. Victor or, a member of your team, do you want to just clarify if that is covered in the environmental document and if there's a easy way to direct folks on where to find that information?
So the specific parts about the design design elements, I mean, again, we're not in the design phase yet, right? Again, a reminder, right now we're in the environmental process. Once we go through the environmental process, again, to look at the impacts on the environment as it relates to this project, that's kind of where we're at today. Once this process is done, we then take to the next step where we get into the design details. Once we get to the design details, we do have specific criteria that we follow, again, to make sure that we design buildings to withstand, earthquakes or whatever safety criteria is applicable to the design elements that have been built. But again, that design process would follow after the environmental process is completed.
And just to add to that, if it's topics associated with flood, it would be in the hydrology and water quality section of the EIR, as well as the EA. Wind topics are covered in the geo section if it's associated with erosion. So there's various sections of environmental topics that question actually triggers. So in order for us to be able to provide a full, complete answer, the best thing for you to do is to provide that comment to the court reporter so that it comes to us. What we do is we collect all your comments through the court reporter and then go through a phase where we do respond to each and every questions and comments that you provide. through the next phase of the CEQA process, which we'll be preparing a final environmental impact report, where you'll be able to actually identify your comments and the responses to those comments and further details associated with the EIR as well as the EA. And if there's a possible chance that the EIR or the EA doesn't fully address your answers, then this is also an opportunity for us to add additional information to properly address your concerns.
Okay, can the team talk about how were the existing transit options incorporated into the analysis?
I think we could talk to that. We have prepared a environmental, we have prepared the transportation chapter, which has considers the existing transit options for this area in terms of potential impacts. And so that would be the best place to look at it. And I don't know if Amanda, you have anything else from the transportation regarding the existing transit?
The only other thing I would add, Jaime, is both the EIR and the EA include a cumulative impact analysis that looks at all of the existing planned and reasonably foreseeable projects. So in the EIR, you can find that discussion in section 3.18, and in the EA, that is section 3.12. So I would encourage viewers to go ahead and look there for additional information.
Great, thank you.
And a question related to West Valley Connector regarding the no-build alternative. Why is the under construction West Valley Connector not included in the no-build? And what is the baseline for a comparison?
So the West Valley Connector project is a project under construction. I think it would sounds like I might need to double check or get help from our team, but the ridership and some other studies did account for the West Valley Connector being an existing condition.
Yeah,
I think it would help if the comment is provided as to where we're not showing it. That seems to be a discrepancy between what we actually did show.
And Victor, I will also, sorry, if I can jump in here, I will also kind of echo what Amanda just mentioned regarding the cumulative projects, the existing and planned projects list. You know, it should be in there, and in terms of kind of the project, in contemplating and accounting for that project. So, you know, just wanted to add that as well.
Can the team point our viewers to where they can find more information about the paleontology and archaeology findings?
The archaeology is within the cultural resources section of the EIR as well as the EA. Paleontological resources are part of the Geo and Soil Seismicity Paleontological Report, section 3.6 of the EA, as well as section 3.6 of the EIR, and then it's also part of the EA and within that category. There's also, there's also additional cultural reports, technical reports that are also part of the EIR as well as the EA as well.
Thank you. If there are any other questions outstanding out there, please feel free to send them my way.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you to our team of technical experts. We really appreciate everybody's time tonight. We're going to give it just a few more minutes for anyone that might need to gather extra thoughts and submit a comment or question. Our team will be here for a little while longer. Again, if you log off and you find that you have a question or maybe something you didn't submit as part of the public comments. You can find all of the information on how to contact our team and how to submit an official public comment at the project website at gosbcta.com/ONT connector. On that website, you will find information about the project itself, the environmental process. All of the environmental documents can be found under the resource tab at the bottom of the page. We also have a link in there for you to submit an official public comment via an online form. And of course, information on how to contact our team if you do need any clarification to, submit those comments or just understand the project in general. So thank you again, everyone. Again, we're just going to give it just a few more minutes. And if we don't see any more comments coming through, we'll go ahead and conclude the presentation.
Madison, I appreciate you and your team helping to facilitate this. I do thank everybody who did participate, of course. And again, this meeting is designed to kind of help you navigate where to find things within the document, to determine if those things exist or not, and what maybe was missed or should be considered, so that you can then incorporate that into a comment for us in that final analysis. So again, we do appreciate everybody being here and participating in the process tonight.
Great. And I'm just going to double check with Aaron. I haven't seen anything come through on my end. Do we have any more questions or comments?
Correct. I think we've covered them all.
Okay. And I just want to double check. I know that we have our court reporter in the breakout room right now. Cynthia, is there any traffic in the breakout room?
No one has joined the breakout room as of right now. It's been cleared.
Great. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and conclude tonight's presentation. Again, thank you to all participants who joined us tonight. You are part of a very important process. Again, if you have any questions or comments, all of our information is on the screen. There's that project website again, our helpline, and again, you can find us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at GoSBCTA. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to our panelists for your time tonight. We appreciate it.